Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gloria. I'm part of the Get Coin team. I'm here with with Jean and Javi and Hugo. Let me get the name straight. With Jean and Hugo, and from the LUKSO team. And I wanted to just really quickly take care of a little bit of housekeeping. First and foremost, the session's being recorded. So if you need to refer back to the session, you can always find it on the Get Coin Media YouTube channel under the LUKSO playlist. There's a whole playlist that has all the sessions, so feel free to come back and take a look at that. Second of all, if you do have any questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A and in the chat. It makes these office hours go really fast if you have lots of questions, so feel free to throw them in there. I'll make sure that your questions get answered. Last but not least, as always, say hi in the chat. Let us know what you're working on, what your project is, where you're watching from. It's a great way for me to get to know all of y'all, but it's also a great way to know each other. With that, I'm going to just take a moment to talk about submissions, because I know that the hackathon is about to end in about a week or so. So I wanted to at least touch base really quickly on submitting. When you submit, or when you're ready to submit, you're going to want to go back to the bounty that you're working on and click Submit Work. There's also an option to stop work, and you do not want to click that one. You want to click Submit Work, and it will submit your project. You'll be able to put up any links that you have affiliated with that project there. If you have a video or a demo, I strongly suggest you include that as well. It really helps. Second of all, there will be an opportunity to participate with community voting. Community voting, we use quadratic voting, so we'll be using Radical Exchange as a quadratic voting mechanism to vote on your favorite projects. You'll get an email that has a unique quadratic voting link, and it will allow you to vote on your favorite projects. You can look at the repos that they submitted and say which ones you enjoyed the most. That's it. If you ever have any questions, you can always DM me on Discord. I am more than happy to go through the process as well. But if not, just sit tight, finish up your project, make it as pretty as it can be, and make sure you get it submitted on time. Yeah, with that, feel free to drop any other questions you have in the chat, and we can get started with our office hours. Let's see. Right, here is some questions. It says, what's the best practice to check if the native LYX transfer has arrived to the UP address?
Yeah, I can go for this. Like you can do like the normal way, get balance. It's get balance on Web3.js. So I don't know what's the underlying RPC code, but whether it is a smart contract or an EOA, you will get it. I'm not sure you can go wrong with this. Maybe I'm missing something, but the classic way is exactly as for an EOA. So just get balance on your Web3 lib, and that should be good. If
I was about to sorry, carry on.
Yeah, thanks. No, I was just about to say, if you have something else in mind that you think is tricky because of the permissions or the key manager, let us know. But the regular way, you just get balance, and that should be good.
Yeah, I was about to add as well on the on the UP, we have implemented the receive function in Solidity, and basically every time a UP receives some native leaks, it does emit an event. So you can basically scrap the event, and the event is called value received, and it will emit the number of leaks that the UP has received but yeah, obviously you can exactly do this as also as Hugo you mentioned. You can just look at the balance and see if it has been updated. Yeah, and I will post the link to the event in from the docs.
Yeah, I also just shared the RPC thing for the low-level stuff, but you see, it's the classic, the classic Ethereum RPC calls. Yeah, cool. Okay, so what's next?
Regarding end-to-end encryption between two universal profiles, how to decrypt the encrypted message, which is encrypted with the private key of with either UPs?
Okay, so one thing is when you say with the private key of a UP, as the UP itself is a smart contract, it cannot sign. A smart contract cannot sign, so the UP won't sign anything. But one of the controller key can sign something. And then I would say it depends on how you want to do this. But because then you need to exchange keys, right? You need to give your public key, like you need to do the classic thing. But in that context, I'm not super sure that you can verify when you get a message. You can verify that this message has been signed by a key that is controlling a UP. But if you want to encrypt, then I would say it's not specific to the UP because the UP cannot sign. So I would say it's like you sign between the controller address of the UPs, but I'm not so sure. I don't know, Jean, if you have any ideas in mind.
Yeah, so I have a rough idea of around that. Although it's a bit of a niche case, but yeah, so it's exactly as you explained, Hugo, because the UP is a smart contract. It's not controlled by its private key; it's controlled by its code, and so it's not the UP directly that encrypt and decrypt. It's an EOA that has permissions on the universal profile that does the encrypting. One way you could do is so you will have two UP, the sending UP as the receiving UP. So let's say the sending UP is Alice universal profile, and you have the main controller address of Alice, the main externally on the CAN that has all the permissions. You could basically apply the same principle of that you do with public key cryptography. Like you will use the public key of an EOA linked to the receiving UP to encrypt the data, send it through from one UP to the other, and basically the receiving UP, only the specific controller address from the receiving end, would use its private key to decrypt it because it has been encrypted with a public key from that. But you will need to know the public key of the controller address. So I don't know how feasible is that's the only way I will think of, really. It's a bit of a niche case. We can write that down, and if we have further findings, we could look into it and post on the channel.
Could you guys explain more about the Shopify tool that's getting developed? Just wondering if we need to add any extra functions on our NFT contracts to use it.
Yeah, that's a good one. So yeah, we have been working on a Shopify plugin, but this is something internal. It's for testing, and it's not intended to be shared, or it was kind of like tests. The idea is just to see how we can automate NFT transfer when you buy something, basically. So that's something we used for like a book. There was this book called Out of the Ether, and when you would buy a copy of that book, you would get an NFT. So how it works, because the idea is quite simple. We work with the transaction relayer. Like we have a backend system that is our relayer, and our relayer will just pay for the fees. You could even do it without the relayer, but the idea is that the plugin, thanks to Shopify APIs, can listen to a couple of things happening. So new order, order status, that kind of stuff. And when you detect something that you want to act on, then you just use whatever logic you want in the back. So the function we use is transfer. I don't recall exactly, but it's not. You don't need extra functions. It's just something that listens to Shopify, and if it detects that this order with that email has ordered that product, which is linked to that asset, then it will either send you an email with a claim token, or it can simply call that function. Then it's really up to you. But as long as the contract has a transfer function, make sure that whoever is calling this has access, has the permission to transfer. And in that case, the assets were created by us, so with our key. So our backend system is capable of transferring this asset. So that's how it works. It's not harder than that. And yeah.
I mean, maybe to chip into this, because I have talked to James a few times already. I think you're FUD, if I remember correctly in here. So the plugin itself was built for, like Hugo said, for the book transfers. It's not a generic tool. It's not built as a generic tool yet. In order to make this a proper generic tool, it would be like you need to build a full-on server system where people can sign in, put in, connect in a way that, put a key in there that is able to control these assets and then send them out in an automatic way. And this is not by far at that level. And also in terms of our roadmap and what we are focusing on, it sadly does not have any priority, because if you guys want to have a mainnet and you're using universal profiles, then the Shopify plugin has to wait. And this is something that can be built, but it's more complicated, because in order to transfer assets, there needs to be a key somewhere, right? And that key needs to sit on some server somewhere in order to transfer assets. Currently, that's possible for the LS14 assets, and we can do that in a very selected basis. But even then, it needs to be always custom made. And but potentially, there could be a service build. Actually, this is a very great task for a future hackathon. Build a Shopify integration and automatic sending of NFTs. But it's not it's not something that's done. Nor has any priority right now.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us today, Fabian. Welcome. Okay, let's see. The next question is oh wait, no, we're gonna go back to this one. Okay. This is from Nathan, and he says, we have followed the documentation for adding transfer functions, but it's not working. Any suggestions?
Yes.
Transfer functions of what? I mean, maybe.
Yeah, I would like to ask more precision. Is it like a guide? Is it from the API docs of a smart contract? Is it like for transferring links between UPs, or is it a transfer function from the token or the NFT standard? I'm not sure to understand. Maybe.
I think we are not getting immediately an answer, except there's maybe a response to the QA. If there's any extra comment in there, or maybe you can put it in the chat if you have some.
Assets, yeah, he said asset transfer for LSP 8.
Where can we see that? Where can we see the answer?
I think it's in the Q&A, like the last comment.
Yeah. Just added it.
If you call the transfer function on the LSP8, that should work. I mean, we have tests running.
I think it depends on
things, right?
Yeah.
We have a whole lot of tests around these contracts that do transfers and create anything.
I think I would say we have to check the error, like what type of error that you get returned back.
So
to be able
actually,
to
specifically, he's saying right now exactly from one UP to another. So what could be the case here is that you're using different versions of the universal receiver delegate, maybe an outdated version, and maybe that the hash that we're using, the universal receiver delegate. So the universal receiver delegate is only acting. So in simple terms, if you set your universal receiver delegate address to 0, like to nothing, and try again, maybe it works then. If it works then, it's because the universal receiver delegate has some kind of different token received hashes. Then we have to see if this is matching. Maybe using some different versions, and therefore, because this is very heavy in development and has been changed a few times over the last few months, so maybe it could be that we are using some old outdated version that somehow doesn't match the universal receiver, how we call it, type ID. Yeah,
the type ID. Yeah,
might be the type ID is different, but you can simply set this. You can simply set this to 0, the universal receiver delegate, right? And then it will just fire an event if the universal receiver function is called, because the LSP8 will try to call the universal receiver function on the second UP. And if that one reverts, obviously it will reverse your transaction. You can check in the transaction logs what's happening, or even if there's a revert message, for example. But might be that there's just different versions, and we have to check internally, actually, Jean, to check if we are using the right type IDs across the contracts. Maybe that's the issue.
Yeah, I will say what you can do also to help you debugging is using the ERC75 inspect tool to fetch the received assets. So you can put the address of both UPs, the sending UP and the receiving UPs, and it will give you you can check after doing the transfer. It might help you debugging and see what's going on. But yeah, definitely have to make sure that both UP on both ends have been deployed with the same version. If the sending UP use the latest smart contract and the receiving UP use like an old version, like something like 0.5.0 from the smart contract, everything, all the type IDs from the LSP1, the hooks, they all change. So definitely making sure for that. So yeah, check the smart contract version on both contract. And the second suggestion would be use the ERC75 inspect tool.
Okay, your error is insufficient funds for gas. So you might want to exactly increase your gas. I don't know. So you have obviously sent not enough, too low gas limit. But if you're sending this through the browser extension and the relayer, they're actually estimating the gas, so it should be working. Looks like I mean, I'm not sure how you're sending it, but if you're actually sending it, it could be. So if you send it, if you funded your own key, right, your controller key, and then you actually sending the transaction directly from the browser extension. You don't go over the relayer. That could be a bug in the browser extension, not setting or estimating the gas correctly. Because that looks like the gas limit is set to a wrong value. So it would be good to create an issue in the issue tracker with the proper information. And you can reference at Dominic, or you just create in the title, make it like this UP extension and then your issue name, and then we will find it and take a look. I mean, am I understandable or am I breaking up? I'm not sure.
No, we can hear you.
Good, yeah.
I'm going to move on to the next question, and it is, does LUKSO have a CLI tool in the making, like Solana CLI tool?
Yeah, I checked the Solana CLI tool. It's a tool to generate keys and send some amounts from one address to another. That's not something we have. We have a CLI, but for node operator, so they can upgrade the network and fetch the latest config and that kind of stuff. It's documented on the docs and the network. But for doing classic transaction and deploying stuff, we don't have a CLI. We have a lib called LSP Factory, which allows you to deploy and set up contracts, but it's not a CLI. So no, we don't have such thing.
I mean, like if for example, it makes sense. I mean, that's actually a good open source project. If somebody wants to take this on, so we have the LSP Factory. It doesn't take much to make the LSP Factory work as a CLI tool, because you could literally like feed in private key and other things into the CLI as parameters, and npm can deploy CLI, JavaScript object packages. So you could make out of LSP Factory something that works in the CLI, and currently it only works in Node directly. So, but like the CLI, I mean, what LSP Factory does, it deploys you universal profiles, it deploys you LSP 7 and 8, in the future other LSPs, that become popular. So it's not hard to write a script to deploy these things using this LSP Factory, for example.
Yeah, I added 2 links to your answer, so you can check if you want.
Okay, opposite to allowed ERC 725 Y keys, which restrict a single address to a specific ERC 725 Y key. Is there a way to restrict all addresses unless specified to set data within an ERC 725 Y key?
I'm not sure I completely got the question. The second part, is there a way to restrict?
Okay. You're basically saying, no, like basically what he's saying is like one address can say, okay, it's restricted to a certain key. He wants a way to restrict every address, right, to a certain key. The problem is, I mean, this does not exist in the key manager. The key manager, LSP6 is meant to be standardized and bare bone. You could build whatever custom key managers in the future, and there will be probably plenty of versions of different ways of how key managers will work in the future. We have to start somewhere, and we will have to start basic. That's a very, I don't know how. I mean, this would need to be completely, like figured out how to make an API for that. Could be added in the future, but it doesn't exist. So you would have to. I'm also
when it doesn't
sure what's
exist,
the benefit of this, because you will add. No key can do anything on your profile unless you give it some permissions, right? And the moment you give it some permissions, you could technically also restrict it. It is a bit more costly because you have to obviously set these restriction keys for each separate address. But I mean, it's a potential feature for the future, I guess. But it would need, the key manager would need to be written different. And yeah, I mean, could be, some LSP, whatever, 20 specific, generic way of restricting all addresses to a certain set of keys.
Yeah, the way you could do that is you will have to have your own Solidity key manager. Like you will override the function. So you will inherit from the key manager, like from your Solidity contract, and the function to check for the allowed ERC75Y key, you will override it to have your own specific logic, so that you will do this instead of the current behavior that you have. And then you will deploy your own key manager like that. That will be the way, really. But yeah, you will have to write your own custom implementation. But yeah, like as Fabian mentioned, like in the first place, you have to give permissions and data. So I think it's a bit complex because you will have technically for every single possible address to give a permission set data, and there is like I don't know how many possible addresses that can be generated. like a lot. So yeah, that would be my answer, really. Yeah.
This is another question is, I have a transaction ID and I want to make sure that the value is what I expected. Web3.eth.get transaction shows 0 as value always. Is there a better way?
These questions are always very confusing. So you have a transaction hash, and you want to make sure that whatever is the value is what you expect. Like Web3 eth.get transaction gives you the nonce of a certain address. So if you don't send a transaction from that specific nonce, it will be 0. So I don't know what a transaction ID has to do with the nonce. I'm confused. So get transaction gives you the nonce. A transaction ID, I think, is the transaction hash, is what you mean. I don't know what value you expect. I'm confused.
Hassan, if you want to explain more in the chat, you can go ahead and do so as well.
Yeah, he added transaction hash in the chat.
Yeah, so the get transaction will not give you you get the no, sorry, it's not get transaction count. Sorry, I was wrong. Get transaction count gives you the nonce. So basically, you will get null back, not a 0, I think. So basically, the transaction is never been sent, is what you're saying. So if you have a transaction hash and this thing shows you null, that means your transaction was never sent to the blockchain, or mined for that matter. What can happen sometimes, and that's a bit tricky, that the nonce, so sometimes what happens is that transactions are in the mempool and then never get mined because there's one transaction missing, one nonce missing. So basically, the others are flying around the mempool, but it never gets executed. I think if you check for get pending transactions, maybe your transaction is in there. I think that could be it. And what you can then also do is you can check on the Block Explorer what's the nonce and make a transaction where you specifically write that next nonce in. That might work.
So he replied saying transaction is done. So I guess it has been mined, but in result, the value is always 0.
I mean, this should return you to this get transaction, I think, should return you the transaction object or null.
Yeah.
If the transaction doesn't exist. So that's more like a generic RPC problem. It's hard to solve here, I guess. It's not very UP specific, but it's somewhere. You have to check on the block scout if it's there. You can check pending transactions. You can check if you're talking to the right RPC endpoint. It could also be that the RPC endpoint you're talking to, that node, is somehow not part of the network. That would be a problem in our RPC endpoint. Hard to tell from here.
We have another question from Nathan, and it says, is there a way to recall data from a UP if we just have the wallet address that controls it? Basically, we would be signing into a wallet instead of a dApp and trying to recall data stored in the UP under that wallet address.
No, because without scanning the blockchain, you have no idea which controller key controls which UP. So you have no idea, because the wallet address is just an address without information. If you don't scan the whole blockchain and all smart contracts and look up all UPs and check if any of these controller keys is that wallet address, that key, then you will not find it. There's no way to go from a controller key to a UP without scanning, like literally analyzing the blockchain. You can go from a UP to the controller address, obviously, right? And also, you should not treat, you call them wallets, you should not treat them anymore as wallets. The UP is your wallet, and the UP is the one actually should hold the data. The controller key should never be a wallet, because it's exactly what we're trying to solve here. Something that's replaceable, right? That's something that's not like anymore the important piece. So ideally, the user and the dApp should never care about the controller keys, nor even know about them. No. LUKST basically, LUKST in this case is the native token of the L16 testnet. It does not have a token. It's not a token is a different thing than the native coin. So if you make a transaction, you make send transaction and you put something in the value field. That's when you send the native token. If you want to send a token, you have to talk to the token smart contract called the transfer function. So even though people call them token, a token based on a smart contract and a native coin token of a network is a very different things. They function very different.
There was a question. Oh yeah, this one.
One
I was about to mention it.
Yeah, this one is a bounty question. It says, does a pull request, for example, an extension version of LSP 7 would be eligible for the open track bounties?
So I will have to check that. I don't know if it's eligible. I've asked to Fabian, but he's gone. But I would say definitely the pull requests are welcome on the repo. Extension are like a very good suggestion. We had people already who submitted a pull request for extension on LSP8. So yeah, I would say highly encouraged, but like for the eligibility part, I do not know personally. I think it depends on what kind of bounty, I guess, if it's bug bounty or if it's I'm not sure.
One thing that I would probably suggest is to retake a look at the bounty and then reach out to whoever posted the bounty. They would probably have the more insight as far as what is the eligibilities for those bounties.
Yeah, I don't know either, but I think this can be case by case. I don't know.
All right. Regarding LSP 11, whenever I try to recover accounts using recover ownership function, it always ends up in error. I'm using the guardian threshold is met recovery contract. Let's see. I'm using the recovery contract has add permissions on UP. Secret is correctly hashed and new owner calls function.
Yes, I think for that the reason is that I'm not completely specialized in LSP11, I will be honest, but I think it's because the recovery contract needs, at the moment, needs add and change permission. It's a behavior that might be slightly changed in the future, so that it just use add permission. But I think at the moment, for the last release, it needs add permission and change permission. I can double check actually. Yeah, I think that's the reason. So I would recommend maybe Fabian, you might be able to add extra comment on this question in the previous one as well.
Sorry, I just had someone on the door. Let me just quickly read.
Yeah.
Whenever I try to recover account using recover ownership function, it always ends up in an error. I'm ensuring the guardian threshold is met. Recovery contract has the add permissions on the UP, and secret is correctly hashed.
I think it's because I think the recovery contract might need add and change permission at the moment, like because of the way it reset it basically resets permission for a new controller address. So I think if it like at the moment the logic of the key manager, the way it has to add into the list of controller addresses and for adding the permission as well, I think it needs these two permission. Add and change, but it's something that might change, that will likely change in the future.
Yeah, I mean, try to give it change permission as well and see if it works.
Yeah, that's what I would suggest.
We also have to say that this contract implementation is in a draft and has been, like not even fully finalized yet. So you might have to look for some potential bugs in, the contract code also. Like that's not all done, right? So take a look. Maybe you can figure out what's the issue. If there's an issue, please raise an issue in LSP smart contracts repo so we can fix it.
Yeah.
It technically should work, right? By the way.
Yeah. Someone asked earlier, does a peer is eligible for open track bounties? So someone earlier asked, we were not sure actually. Someone asked, does a PR, for example, an extension version of LSP7 would be eligible for open track bounties?
Sorry, a what?
A pull request, for example, for maybe if Gloria, you can put the question back.
A pull request would be eligible for a bounty.
For an open track bounty.
I mean, it's not quite. I mean, in a 6 weeks hackathon, making one change in a smart contract is probably not really like worth a bounty. It depends on how complex your additions are and how good they are. I mean, maybe they're bounty worthy, but it does feel more like something that could be done in half a day. So I'm not sure if that's the right for a 6 weeks hackathon. But yeah, depends really what you have done there, I guess. For the future, see it as also, you guys, if you are doing open source contributions to a project which probably will be used by thousands of developers, you will actually, your bounty is your reputation gain, right? Like everybody in the open source world is like, yes, bounties are cool when they're paid off, but the real reward is that you are a person that like is known to contribute to open source projects and that people will value and reference to. So the reputation gain is the real benefit that you get, right?
I had a talk with someone the other day about that, how like hiring is going to be so different in the world where you can just hire people based on their reputations, on their contributions in their open source to their communities versus, having a resume or doing it the old traditional way.
I mean, if people come to us, and looking for a job, I go to their GitHub page and look how green it is, right? And ideally how much open source contribution they've made. The higher that is, the very higher likely it is that I will hire you. So obviously, this is the, I don't care about what university you went to. I do care about your green boss on GitHub.
Nice. This was a potential answer to the previous question about LSPs 11s.
From Yaman replied directly confirming what we were saying. But yeah, you did add and change permission. So yeah, thanks, Yaman.
Yeah, kudos, Yaman. The last question that I have is regarding structuring of an NFT which has a master edition of 1 and multiple copy editions. Is there a recommended way? I'm thinking of using LSP8 as it allows to mint multiple tokens. However, there's no way to denote the master edition.
I don't exactly know what a master and a copy is. That's kind of... So you're talking about 2 NFTs? Or do you talk about like, isn't that the same NFT technically speaking? I mean, this is more like a context-based thing. You say this is that and this is that. I mean, I guess if you want to have a master, you could say there's one contract with only one. It's kind of a waste of blockchain storage space. It must be a very valuable NFT to have only one smart contract for one thing. And then you can make a second smart contract, which is then the copy editions, how you call them, which would then be, more NFTs. But also you can make a token, an LSP7 token that functions as an NFT as long as you set the decimals to 0. Because you can literally add images and metadata the same way you do that to an NFT. With the difference is that minting here a large number is very cheap because it just mints a large number. Each single NFT doesn't have a unique ID, but for things that are digital fashion or profile pictures, that's not even necessary. I mean, profile pictures, if everyone is unique, you want to have separate IDs. But if you just have one item that there's 10,000 copies, for example, in your copy editions, it makes more sense to use LSP7 rather than LSP8, because it's cheaper transferring. You can transfer it in bulk and you can mint in bulk. So you just set this decimal to 0 when you deploy it, and you give it the same NFT-like metadata in the LSP4 metadata JSON file.
All right. Here is another question, and this says, I assume no, but is there any way end users to burn unwanted tokens filling their wallet, or are we going to have to send them Vitalik's future LUKSO wallet?
Okay. It's again a very confusing written. Is there any way for end users to burn unwanted tokens? Yes, you just send them to an address that no one controls, for example. Filling their wallet? I don't understand. Is that the question?
Yeah, I think. I think what he's asking is there a way that you can burn, like, if you receive tokens that you don't want, like, is there a way that you burn them because it's a token that you didn't want in the first place? That's what I understand from the question.
So we don't have a burn preset contract, but the thing is, again, anybody can build. If you create your own token, right, you can create whatever versions you want. You can use the basic LSP7. You can deploy one that has a burn function. You can say people should send burning means send them to the address 0xFFFFF. Then people have to use the force parameter to send, because it would be obviously not a smart contract but an EOA that nobody has a private key to. So there's many ways to burn tokens if you want to do that.
Yeah, you could have. Go on. Go.
Thanks. Also, with the UP, there is the universal receiver delegates that listen to stuff, and it will write the token address in your UP. So any DApp or anything can know which token you have. The balance can be 0, but we know that some token interacted with your profile, and you can always remove those keys, those unwanted keys from your UP. So yeah, that's also something to add.
I mean, the thing is, for example, you have probably a lot of tokens that you don't care about already. There's a lot of airdrops happening. So in the future, like, if people use LSP7 or 8, you can literally reject airdrops, because you could build your universal receiver in such a way that you reject tokens that you don't know, and you only allow a whitelisted number of token addresses, and then you could literally reject them. I mean, but somebody could always build a custom version of LSP7 or 8 that does not care about the universal receiver return value, and somehow wraps them in such a call that the revert doesn't do anything and still gives you a balance. But it's up to you to care or not to care, I guess.
Yeah, I think that would be something interesting, that in the future that you have created registries that list token address that are spams or scam, and you could have custom implementation of an LSP1 delegate that check these registries, and if the token that you receive, basically just reject it. It's something that could be interesting in the future. So you will have your LSP1 delegate will be basically like a sort of firewall for tokens for UUPs. That would be very interesting.
For spam balances.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool thing.
Yeah, for this one, you are using get transaction receipt, but you can also try to use get transaction. And in the get transaction, you have a value. So maybe that's what you need. I think that's you should get the amount by replacing get transaction receipt by just get transaction. I sent the link. Oh, the value is always 0. Okay. Is it a transfer between UP? It should still be in this field value.
If you send
because it's wrapped.
Sorry, what? Yeah, so if you're trying to get the balance, you have to read get balance from. You want to know which value was sent. I think LSP0 has a value received event, right? We still have the value received event in there, John.
Yeah, they still have a value received event. Yeah, so like
So
once
you can look for that event, and then you know
Yeah.
the value that was received.
Yeah, you can just look up the event log, and you will even know who sent you the native token. So like you will even have a confirmation of the amount and who you were expecting the native token from.
But I think we're not tracking the value received event in the browser extension right now. We should definitely add that in the activity stream.
Yeah, there's someone who asked if I want to create an LSP version of ERC1155, what number should I put for the LSP number, I guess?
I mean, the idea of the numbers is basically pull requests and issues have the same counter. So if you create an issue, right? I mean, I think the way to do it is not just to make a pull request for a proposal, but first create an issue, put your spec in there, because then we can debate this, and this issue number could later become the LSP number. But if you know that somehow gets squatted before for whatever reason, then you can always be a different number. I guess it would definitely make. I mean, the idea is to go either with the pull request number or the issue number, where this document was debated. It's not about squatting the coolest numbers. It's about it's just a number that just increases. But 1155. So LSP 6, 7, and 8 does have a batch transfer functionality. So it technically already contains LSP 7, 1155 kind of behavior. So there's also regarding judging and submissions and the judging criteria question. The judging criteria is actually mentioned in the submissions. But because it's very technical, I mean, it's really about the more it's clever the solution is on a technical basis, and it's well represented in a way that it's digestible, and ideally it's good looking, the better. Like if it's something, for example, if you're solving a technical problem on a protocol basis, but it's very clever, the interface is not that important. But if you're just making, using what we have and putting it together to create a new kind of app, I guess the interface and the user experience is more important, because the technical depth is maybe not that deep.
Last question is, am I able to mint more tokens to an LSP8 contract after it's been deployed?
Yeah, you can. You can call the. So I think someone already replied just by calling the mint function. Maybe if you deploy the LSP8 contract from scratch, really from Web3 or Ether, maybe you deployed the LSP8 identifiable digital asset, which is not the one, the right one, because this one doesn't have a mint function exposed. You should deploy the LSP8 mintable contract from the preset folder. So you will deploy the contract, and then you will have a public mint function exposed, so you will be able to.
Yeah, and also maybe to make it clear, an LSP is basically a standard. The mint function is actually not standardized. It's not part of the standard. So there is a preset, a pre-done smart contract version that has a mint function that we have there, and because it's not part of the standard, you can add whatever logic you want in there. So right now, the owner of the contract, which is the ER75Y owner of the contract, is able to mint. What you could do is, and you can call the mint function as long as you want. If you want to mint and then later show people that you cannot mint anymore, there is a renounce ownership function that's part of the ownable part of the contract, that you can basically renounce your ownership. Nobody's the owner anymore, so nobody can call mint again. But right now, in that preset, but again, you can modify these contracts as much as you want, and you can build whatever custom rules and logic you want.
Yeah, I was to
on
add
top of
as
this.
well. I don't know if you are like smart contract developer or dev developer, but like basically Mint is like the supply mechanism. It's completely arbitrary. Like here on the preset contract is through the Mint function, but the way you create the tokens and the way you create the NFTs is completely up to you. You could have a function name, whatever you want, that either mint one token at a time once you call a function, or 10 NFT at a time, 100 NFT, or like some very complex logic. The supply, the way you create the supply is really up to you. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, and here also I will post the link. That's the specific line of code that you want to look at. I mean, you can literally like copy this contract and change whatever logic you want to have in exactly that min function. All it does, it calls the internal min function with a token ID force data 2. And you can say, okay, can only be called once, can be called 10 times, can be called by this set of addresses. You could use whatever logic you want. In this case, it's restricted by only owner, and the owner is the owner contract of the 75Y part of the contract, and the owner can be renounced or changed or transferred. But you could have whatever logic you want there if you want to make something. So the whole thing about smart contract is that standards do not enforce, because we can from a network level we cannot enforce certain standards. We can just suggest, and people can use it this or that way. People can make any number of arbitrary versions of these standards. So if you can code smart contracts, you can literally do whatever smart contract you want. You want to use a certain standard because you want to be compatible to like wallets, other interfaces, certain websites, and so on. That's the reason why people adhere to standards, not because they have to.
Awesome. I don't see any more questions. So last call for questions. If you do have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat or in the feed. Just a reminder, you still have about a week left with this hackathon. So it's a good time to reach out to the rest of the team if you do have any other questions or you need any help. Maybe finish cleaning up your project, create a demo for your project would be good too. Yeah, I don't see any other questions. So with that, I'll just say to Jean, Hugo, and Fabian, thank you so much for coming and joining us today for this office hours and for sharing your expertise. I find these to be really insightful. Hopefully you all found them to be really insightful as well and got all your questions asked. If not, jump into the Discord, ask away there, and people are really responsive there as well.
Yeah, and we really appreciate you guys digging into this. I mean, I see different levels of knowledge of blockchain development in general, right? That's okay. You guys will get in there. It takes a bit of time, but once you will get in there. And also keep in mind that not everything is perfectly done. Not everything is totally ready, right? We are building this as we go. So it will get better. And once people actually start to use these, interacting with different applications, that's when the magic starts to happen, and people will see why this is cool, fun, and better than MetaMask. Okay, cool. Thanks so much, guys.
Bye, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.